Yesterday, the Wall Street Journal put out this article about this Florida woman, this lawmaker, who had an ectopic pregnancy and the situation that she had with taking care of her medical situation. I'm going to put on my fake glasses for this discussion because it requires fake glasses. So the first time I saw this pop up, it was over on Threads with Aaron Parnas. Y'all know he always be breaking all the stories. It says Florida Republican Congresswoman struggled to get care for an ectopic pregnancy because of Florida's termination ban. So they do put their articles behind a paywall. I'll get to the article in a moment. MSN actually put it out, so I'll be able to read the whole article from MSN. So Aron Ortega says, let me guess, she's reconsidering her position now that it personally affects her. That would require empathy. These types of people don't give a damn about other folks. Aaron Parna says, no, she's blaming Democrats, actually. And that is just a spoiler. Yes, I'm going to get to that when I get to the article. RYAN says, unlikely. She's not dead or maimed from this, so it didn't actually impact her ability to ultimately receive care because she's an elite. They're not going to actually let these elites die, especially someone like a lawmaker, because that would be bad for business. That would be bad press. So she got the care she needed. However, if she was a colored gal, they would probably let that woman expire or make it so that she can't have babies because they would let her bleed out or whatever the hell they're doing in these forced birther states. Queer Surgeon says, this individual has played clips of my lectures in Congress trying to ban healthcare for marginalized people. Fascinating psychology she's demonstrating here. What an embarrassment. And then Black Widow says she should have gotten that fancy reimplanting of the zygote all the old white Republican men have been saying can be done. Most importantly, she should be charged with a felony for aborting this zygote. It's not the zygote's fault she had an inhospitable reproductive system. Mental Illness says she somehow blamed Democrats for Republican laws. And Barago Fit says that's some skill right there. Britt RN in Florida says, did she end up getting care? She did end up getting care because she's still alive. Chasing Oz says they should have just let her die, just like they would have let any other woman presenting the same issue in Florida. Why should she have privilege? Because she is part of the elite. SA Studio says that's why she supported this issue, because she knows the elite will always be the exception. The Get Good Girl says, but are you okay with that? Are you okay with what? Probably I am. I am absolutely okay with these people getting precisely what they vote for. If she expires, then maybe that will create some change. Sometimes these types of people need to be the impetus for change, and I'm willing to sacrifice her life so that we can have some impetus for change. And that's what Furry Infinity Cosplay says. With her getting what she wanted others to have, yeah, let her suffer the same way others have. It's her fault. FAFO. Now let's get to the article. So like I said, I went to MSN to get this Wall Street Journal article since it was behind the paywall. It's titled, Republicans' Life-Threatening Pregnancy Collided with Florida Termination Politics. It says Representative Kat Cammack arrived at the emergency room in May 2024, terrified by what she had just learned. Her pregnancy could unalive her at any moment. It would only get worse. The Florida Republican needed a shot of methotrexate to help expel her ectopic pregnancy, in which there was no way for the embryo to survive. Her state's 6-week termination ban had just taken effect. She said doctors and nurses who saw her said they were worried about losing their licenses or going to jail if they gave her drugs to end her pregnancy. She began arguing her case. The staff resisted, she said, even though doctors earlier that day estimated she was just 5 weeks pregnant. There was no heartbeat and her life was at risk. She pulled up the state law on her phone for hospital workers to read. She says she called the governor's office late at night for help, but no one picked up. Not everybody has access to just call up the governors. No, she didn't get the governor on the line, but she has special access. She should have been allowed to go through what all the other women in Florida would have to go through. I hate that she got special care. I hate that she got special consideration simply for being who she is. Okay, let me continue. Hours later, doctors finally agreed to give her the methotrexate, Kamek said. The Florida ban, which took effect May 1st, 2024, made terminations illegal after 6 weeks with limited exceptions. It didn't ban procedures for ectopic pregnancies, but concern about the law's wording made doctors hesitant, said patients and physicians. Months later, Florida regulators gave guidance to address what they called misinformation, making clear that doctors should intervene in cases such as Kamek's. Like I said, I'm still willing to sacrifice people like Kamek just so we can make sure to really drill it in that women's life is in danger. Pregnant again and due this summer, Kamek said the politics of the incident linger with her. While Kamek opposes termination and co-chairs the House pro-life caucus, she supports exceptions for reported cases of rape and incest in the first trimester and in instances in which the mother's life is at risk. This is the part that gets me, under who's to blame. Kamek doesn't fault the Florida law for her experience. No. Instead, she accuses the left of scaring medical professionals with messaging that stressed that they could face criminal charges for violating the law. She says she feels those efforts gave medical staff reason to fear giving drugs even under legal circumstances, not the people who created the law, not the people that created the fines and the jail time, the people who are for women actually having reproductive rights. That's the people that's the problem. It was absolute fear-mongering at its worst, she said. She also knows that reproductive rights advocates might see the opposite, that the Republican-led restriction caused the confusion. There will be some comments like, well, thank God we have reproduction services, even though what I went through wasn't a termination, she said. Kamek declined to name the hospital where she received care. Reproductive rights advocates say the law created the problems. While Florida regulators say ectopic pregnancies aren't terminations, they are exempt from restrictions. The law doesn't define ectopic pregnancy, and it isn't always easy for doctors to tell where an embryo has been implanted, said Molly Duane, a senior attorney for the Center for Reproductive Rights. Asked whether pro-choice groups contributed to the confusion, Duane said Florida regulators had stressed how seriously they planned to enforce the ban. She said blaming medical workers echoes the playbook of forced birther extremists that for decades have been blaming and villainizing doctors. Dr. Allison Haddock, president of American College for Emergency Physicians, says it is common for doctors in states that have restricted termination access to worry whether their clinical judgment will stand should there be any prosecution. She called early pregnancy care, including in instances of ectopic pregnancies, a medically complicated space where uncertainty in diagnosis and treatment plans is common. There has been a real stress point for a lot of our physicians, she said. Kamek, 37, who announced her current pregnancy at a White House event, is on track to become the 14th Congresswoman to give birth while in office. Elected to Congress in 2020 after working as a top staff member, she has focused on securing money for Hurricane Helene victims and supporting veterans and farmers in her district in northern Florida. In a 90-minute interview, she spoke publicly about her miscarriage for the first time. She says she hopes sharing her experiences steers conversation toward common ground. I would stand with any woman, Republican or Democrat, and fight for them to be able to get care in a situation where they are experiencing a miscarriage and an ectopic pregnancy, she said. She said the difficult political environment is to blame for preventing discussions on how to improve women's health care. We have turned the conversation about women's health care into two camps, pink hats and pink ribbons, she said, and it's either breast cancer or termination. In her first year in Congress, she testified about her family ties to the issue. Her mother, a stroke survivor, was told by doctors to terminate her pregnancy with Kamek, warning that it put her at risk of another stroke. She went on to deliver Kamek without any problems. The important thing is that women should have options that they talk about with their doctors. What forced birthers and Republicans want to do is continue to chip away at that relationship between doctors and their patients and make it a political issue to where these doctors have to think about fines and jail time and losing their license. That's the reason why these doctors did that. And this is the reason why many forced birther states are losing healthcare professionals. Anyways, join the conversation. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.